Right, so we're talking about writing winning scholarship essays. If you have any questions, you can, during the presentation, you can type them into the chat, you can raise your hand, and then we'll also have time for question and answer at the end. So you can participate then, or we share our emails. So if you wanna ask a question that's a little more personal or that you think of afterwards, you can always contact us via email too. Okay, so one thing that we recommend when you're writing scholarship essays is to do your research. So be intentional and consider your audience. Find out more about the organization or the persons involved in the scholarship. What is their mission? What is their purpose? What do they have on their website, for example, as their mission statement? What are their goals? If it's a memorial scholarship, if it's in honor of someone, what is it about that person that they're honoring? Were they a community service advocate? If so, how does your experience align with that scholarship? What community service have you done that can show through in your essay? And then think of the reader's expectations. So keep in mind who you're writing to. For example, with a memorial scholarship, we have the Don Van Bruggen Scholarship on campus. And researching who that person is, what they stood for, can help you as you write your essay and align your experience to show how it fits into what the purpose of the scholarship is. So you may have a general essay, you may have a general scholarship essay. That's a good start. It's a good draft, but you can tailor it to each specific scholarship you're applying to, and that will help it be more personalized, and it'll help it with your readers to show that you're really putting an effort into this particular scholarship. One way you can do that is by being passionate and personal. So they provide the scholarship committee an opportunity to get to know the person behind the application. Your essay is a way to introduce yourself without actually meeting the person face to face. So that's where you want to share what you're passionate about, what your story is, what identities you encompass. So who are you as a scholar? What identities inform who you are and what you do? What or who is part of your academic journey? Personal and passionate are recurring words that surfaced when we were looking at different scholarship applications and scholarship questions. So take time to reflect and consider why you selected your specific field. If you're an engineering major, for example, let's say civil engineering with the focus on water quality, was that informed by something in your local town? Was the water quality not good? Were you inspired by someone that was a mentor to you? If you want to be a doctor because you experienced someone overcome an illness, you can share that story. You can make it personalized, what led you to that specific field. What are some personal reasons that led you to where you are now? So being first generation, for example, what led you to pursuing higher education, and how does that inform you as a scholar and as an individual? So we have an example of that. This is a video on YouTube by Dr. Anita Tijerina. We're only going to watch a small clip because it's pretty long, it's 12 minutes, but I highly recommend that you watch it on your own time. We're going to watch a part where she explains her different identities. So instead of just saying I'm a student or I'm an engineering major, what other parts or what other communities do you belong to? And how does that inform you and your goals? So you can start painting the story of who you are, of what you're passionate about, so that your readers can get to know you through your essay.
I'm going to start off by situating myself and letting you know a little bit about who I am and how I came to be here. What you'll find is that when you enter the classroom, some of your professors, probably most of them, will go directly into the subject matter, and they won't tell you anything about who they are. But I happen to think, like many feminists and many social justice scholars, that what happens outside of the classroom is really relevant to what's happening inside. In terms of how you hear me, in terms of how I teach you, who I am matters, and who you are matters to me. So I am a Chicana, Latina, Tejana from the south side of San Antonio, Texas. I grew up in extreme poverty. I was raised by a single mother who did not have access to higher education, and my father died when I was 8 years old. I am, like many of you, a first-generation college student and also a first-generation academic, which makes me very different than many of my colleagues. I also identify as queer, bisexual, and fluid. I don't fit or desire to fit into a heteronormative paradigm. I'm what some people call a woman of size. It means I don't match the Euro-patriarchal body image, the Euro-patriarchal image of beauty, and I work actively to reject it. I'm also committed to social justice, I'm a feminist, and I'm an activist scholar. But my business card just says that I'm the chair of the Department of Interdisciplinary Gender and Ethnic Studies. Obviously, I'm much more than my business card.
So as you're thinking of your different identities and the groups that you belong to, you can see what you were inspired by, how that informs what your goals are, how that can apply to the essay you're writing in responding to questions. And it's a way to start brainstorming. Who are you? What are you passionate about? What led you to where you are? So that when you go to write that essay, you're not staring at a blank page. You kind of have an idea of what you are and what you want to include into that essay.
I'm going to start off by...
It's a great video. I really recommend you watch the rest of it. And so when you're brainstorming, as you think of your different identities, you can also start including some pre-writing strategies, which you may have looked at before in like your English classes or some writing classes, if you visited the writing center. If you can give like a thumbs up if any of these you've done before, you've heard of. We have pre-writing strategies like creating a list, identifying what you've completed, and what you want to include. Like we saw with that last video, she had a list or bullet points of what she's completed, who she is. We have writing strategies like mapping or webbing. That's you can also think of it like spider webbing, where you put something in the center and then it maps off into, or branches off into different, more elaborate pieces of that one thing that you started with. You can have a reflective or a free write, where you start writing down your thoughts and you keep writing until it's a way like a brain dump, where you can just put everything that you have on your mind, and then from then pick out what you want to elaborate on. And you can also do an outline or a reverse outline, or both, which is recommended. And we'll go into these a little bit more in detail, so you can think of what you want to use when you're writing your essays.
All right, so one of the pre-writing strategies we are going to discuss is, a list, a simple list, just identifying what are your strengths, what challenges or obstacles have you experienced or overcome, what accomplishments, have you, what are your accomplishments, what are your organizational or professional leadership experiences? And what makes you unique? What are the unique qualities that will set you apart from other applicants when you're writing your scholarship essay? And then, of course, campus and community involvement and activities, okay? So this is where you show your reader that you are not only an academic, but you also are involved in your campus and your community. So we have another form of pre-writing strategy that you can use, and it's kind of like a disorganized outline, if you can look at it like that. So you can put like your main idea in the center and then branch off into various directions. And it's kind of like a free write in outline form. So you're just kind of creating links to different from your main point out to different subpoints that you'll have in your essay. You can find, if you just Google mind mapping, free mind mapping apps will come up. You can also use Canva. One that I like to use is, I think it's called Linksys. So if you Google any, and then what's the one you had, Denise? MindMud or MindMup?
MindMup.
MindMup, right? So I generally just Google like mind mapping and several things will come up. Um, yeah, so that's one way. There's also the free write. Okay, this is my favorite, and this has to do with if you have a writer's block, right? You have trouble getting started. Okay, so a reflective free write is something that you want to do that's time bound. Okay, so you don't want to free write all day, right? The point of it is to kind of get your writing going. So a lot of times you can have a set a timer. You can eliminate your distractions, do it somewhere private, alone, and you're not really concerned about grammar or punctuation, even structure of your what you're writing down. It's really just dumping stuff out onto the page to get your ideas flowing. Okay. You can do this handwritten, you can do it on a computer, and we recommend you write without stopping, kind of like a stream of consciousness type of writing. Okay. So here's a quote from Allison Law. You should follow the flow of your ideas and you shouldn't pressure yourself to fully tease out everything. You should not censor your ideas. You may be quick to discount an idea, but if you give it a chance, it may take you somewhere totally unexpected and extremely productive in terms of writing a successful paper. So if you have trouble getting started, this is really a good way to jumpstart your writing process. And then of course we have the outline, the dreaded outline. And if, I highly recommend students, I can't say that I used it as an undergrad, but in graduate school, I really began to understand the importance of an outline. Um, it takes a lot of time on the front end, but it will save you a tremendous amount of time in the back end in terms of editing, in terms of putting stuff into your essay that doesn't belong or relate to your thesis. So it takes a little bit more time on the front end, but it will save you a lot of time in the long run. And I like to, liken an outline to a map. If you're going to drive across country without a map, you're probably going to get lost. You know, Similarly, if you write an essay without an outline, um, your ideas will often seem disorganized. They may not relate back to your thesis, and your reader is definitely probably going to get lost as they're reading your essay. So there's a traditional outline, right? So you can say what your major is. You can talk about your personal characteristics in terms of your values and strengths, challenges you've overcome, your involvement in academic or non-academic activities, uh, your leadership, okay? So when you're talking about your leadership, you don't just want to say, I was secretary of this particular organization or the historian of this particular organization, but what leadership skills did you gain from being a secretary or a historian of that organization, okay? And give concrete examples.
I like that analogy, Dustin, of driving across country without a map. Similarly, with the reverse outline, you can go back and see if you've met the different items that you said you were going to include in your essay. So if you find that the reverse outline doesn't match your outline, that you had another example that you included, you can see if you want to give that its own paragraph to fit in with the flow of your paper, or if it goes off on a tangent and you want to remove it. So it's all part of the drafting and editing process.
Yeah. And excuse the librarian announcement in the background. But also like a reverse outline, I look at it as a major topic outline. So you can write down the main points of each of your paragraphs, and then the reverse outline will allow you to see if you have a topic sentence that relates to that main point, and then whether or not your main point relates back up to your thesis. Okay, so if your main point doesn't connect to your topic sentence or your thesis, that tells you that you probably need to revise that and take it out of your essay altogether.
Good point. Another way, to organize your essay is to have different things that will keep you on track. like keeping your prompt readily available for reference. When I'm writing, or when I was writing essays or scholarship essays, I would put the prompt on top and bold it. That way you can always refer back to it and see, am I answering the questions that they're asking? You can write it on a Post-it and put it on the side of your computer or laptop. You can copy and paste it onto a Word document, and you refer back to it to see if you are answering the specific examples that they're requesting for, or the questions that they're asking. You can also underline your thesis to make sure that you are staying on track with what you said you were going to show in the paper. So make sure it's clear, make sure that you're presenting examples for it, that you're elaborating on it, that you're providing details. So referring to that to guide you along your essay. You can underline transitions and topic sentences to make sure that there's a flow within the paragraphs. And you can refer to your outline and reorganize if necessary. Like Dustin said, an outline is like a roadmap. So it is there to guide you, but you can always go back and add a stop if you want, or venture off to see a great attraction. So if you want to add an example that wasn't in your original outline, that's completely doable. It's your paper, it's your writing, it's your story, and you can always go back and edit it and see that it's still organized, still flows, still is understandable to the reader. And that's where outside resources like the Writing Center comes into play, the University Writing Center, which is holding tutoring both hybrid, so online and in person this semester, your advisors from the different programs that you belong to, so EOP, RAMP, Bronco Scholars, for example, Arches, peers, teachers, mentors, friends. So this organization will help you develop your story. And then when you go into the editing process, then you can tap into those different resources too. Here are some tips on what to include and not include, or do and not do when you're writing your essay. So do use a theme or quotation to guide your essay. You want to make sure it's not cliche, so not a quotation that's overly used. People read a lot, the scholarship readers read a lot of essays, so you want them to be interested and engaged with your hook, with your thesis, with your story, and not use one that's too cliched, but you can use a theme or a quotation. You do want to share personal goals and values. This is a way for you to introduce yourself to them, for them to get to know you. And making that personal can help paint that story. You do want to share past achievements and failures and how they shaped your life. Failures show vulnerability, but they also show growth. So everyone fails. Explaining what you learned from that failure and what you would do differently can help you in your essay to show that you have skills to manage failures and that you're using it as a growth opportunity. You can share past and current involvement in activities and how you benefited from them. Like Dustin said, what you learned being a historian of that club, for example. You can use specific examples because that really helps paint a story and lets the reader get to know you. You can use chronological order to help the flow of your essay, so to guide them along in a story, for example, what happened or what led you to where you are now. Do solicit feedback and revise. You're writing to a real person, so getting feedback from a real person can help if they can point out areas that they might have gotten lost in, or maybe one paragraph didn't connect as smoothly to another, and that feedback can help you when you revise your essay. And do write an active voice. So I wrote this essay versus passive voice, like this essay was written by me. If you have apps or extensions like Grammarly, sometimes that can really help with pointing out instances like that. Do not repeat information that's already on the application. Do not overly praise yourself without evidence. Do not write about controversial topics like politics or religion. You don't know the stance of your readers, if they're really pro one thing or against another. And so you don't want them to bring any outside biases when they're reading a topic that's controversial. Readers try to be impartial, but everyone's human. So you don't want to write about something that the other person may not agree with. So try to keep it not a controversial topic. Don't blame others for your shortcomings. Avoid cliches, jargon, colloquialisms, or unfamiliar terminology or technology. So make sure that you're writing something that will be understandable by people that are reading your essay. You don't know their first language, their background, you don't know their age, you don't know their demographics. So they may not understand like current terms, and keep that in mind when you're writing your essays. I've taught English, for example, and I've had students write, "The struggle was real." And things like that, things like lit, it may not come across the way that you intend it to if your audience isn't familiar with that terminology. Do not recycle your essay if you're reapplying. You want to still make it relevant to you and your experience, so you can update it with what you've learned since you last applied. So if it's a yearly scholarship, what you've learned, what you've done in that year. You don't want, if it's the same person reading it, you don't want them to think, well, I read this last year, they didn't put much effort in resubmitting. Don't use absolute language like "I always," or I never. And again, don't write in passive voice if you can. And then part of the essay writing process is revising and editing. So when you're revising it, you're looking at the content, you're addressing the prompt, you're looking at like global level, where make sure that your topic is answered in your response, make sure that you have a thesis statement, that you have examples, that you have an overall structure, you have a paragraph structure, make sure that you're addressing like strengths and weaknesses, that it's clear, that you're meeting the word count, that you're following the style. So you're really looking to see if your overall paper is cohesive, if it makes sense. And then when you're editing, that's when you go sentence level. So you look sentence by sentence, word by word at spelling, grammar, punctuation, your tone, your word choice, your typos. The reason for this is you don't want to really edit the paper, and then when you're revising, you see that one of the paragraphs is off topic and you just end up omitting that paragraph. So that's the time you spent really correcting the grammar and correcting the word choice wasn't used in the end. So revising, you first look at the overall cohesiveness, ideas of the paper, and then editing, you go like word by word. One thing that can help you with revising and editing is using like Google Translate. So if you type in your essay or like have it read back to you, I think some programs also feature that. So if you type it in and then have it read it out loud to you, you can catch things like double words, for example, or if you omit a word. Sometimes we type so quickly. I know I've typed in like "the" twice, or my mind's ahead of my fingers, so I miss a word. And having it read it back to you can help you catch errors like that.
Okay, so after you do all that stuff that Denise just discussed, and I think it's really important because when people are reading a large volume of essays, they're looking for ways to eliminate particular applicants. Okay, so if you didn't meet the word count, okay, they're probably going to toss it. If they see some grammatical errors in your first paragraph, they're probably going to toss it, right? So at least you have to meet the minimum criteria for the essay. So stay within the word count, proofread it, and that way the person who's reading the essay will get through the entire essay without eliminating you off the top. Okay, so after you've done all those steps that Denise was describing, you want to proofread for one error at a time. So in other words, so am I looking for comma splices? Am I looking for punctuation marks that are wrong, right? So you can circle all the punctuation marks in your essay and make sure that you're using the correct punctuation mark for each sentence. Okay. Don't rely on spell check or autocorrect. Yeah, because we all know that your computer or Your phone will type something that you thought, and it'll be a mistake. So don't rely on that. Um, use fresh eyes, okay? So sometimes you have to give yourself a break um, from your essay, go away from it for a day or two, come back to it with fresh eyes. You'll have a different perspective. I think fresh eyes can also mean just having other people read it. Um, send it to your mom, send it to your sisters, send it to someone in class. Denise and I, are constantly reviewing scholarship essays for our participants. You can give it to an advisor to proofread. Um, the point being, the more people that have eyes on your essay, the more mistakes that you're going to correct, and you're going to make sure it makes sense, right? Um, when I write things, they always make sense to me, right? But if someone else reads them, they go, I don't think this makes sense right here. You might want to change that. So as Denise was talking about, you could, use something like Google Translate to read your paragraphs out loud. I often read my material out loud to myself. When I read it out loud, often I'll catch mistakes that I wouldn't have caught if I was just reading it silently. So consider it. All right, so you're finalized, proofread, next slide. Additional tips, okay? So find the right scholarship for you. So look at the Office of Financial Aid and Scholarships. This is the hot time right now, right? Scholarship Fest. This is the time when a lot of the scholarships are available to be applied for. So this is why we do this during this workshop during this time, because a lot of the scholarships are due around this time period. Okay? And you want to use time management. One of the biggest mistakes that I see undergraduates make in terms of writing is doing what I used to do as an undergrad, like try and write a whole entire essay in one night. Okay. Now, some of us are gifted, some of us are, little Toni Morrisons, or, and you can do that, right? But most of us aren't. And you'll have a much better product if you break down your essay into manageable components. So you want to have you want to create a schedule of specific writing time. So you may want to say, hey, I want to do my intro paragraph in my thesis today. I'll do one body paragraph tomorrow, another body paragraph Wednesday. So really breaking it down into manageable components. And I think this will also prevent you from having that writer's block, because a lot of writer's block is caused by intimidation, or you procrastinated. And you realize you have this huge assignment you have to do in this short amount of time, right? And it causes anxiety. So to kind of lessen that anxiety, just take it step by step, right? But that really puts the onus on you in the sense that you have to plan, right? You can't procrastinate. You have to set up a schedule and follow it, okay? So create your own personal deadlines. You don't have to have the deadline that the instructor or the scholarship set forth. Create your own internal deadline a couple weeks prior, before the actual deadline, and this will prevent you from procrastinating and doing things at the last minute. Okay, so write early and proof often. Okay, I guarantee you the people that read the scholarship essays can tell, as soon as they read it, if you had an outline, if you took your time in writing the essay, or if you just did it the previous night before it was due. And like I said, some people can do that. And you may be that one, that small percent within that small percentage of people that can write like that. But the majority of us aren't like that. So you got to break it down. And then use your campus resources, okay? I like to say, even your greatest authors, if you look to the back of their novels, okay, they'll always have like dedications to particular people that help them with their project. And they all have editors, right? They'll often dedicate it to their wife who read the manuscript, and right. So even the best authors have other people read their work, okay? So you really have to open yourself up to criticism, um, uh, and really let as many people as possible read your work, okay? So that would, you can use Arches tutors, you can use EOP tutors, RAMP tutors, the University Writing Center. You can run these scholarship essays past your peer mentors. And believe me, you'll have a much better product at the end of the day. If you write early and proof often, and you let fresh eyes view your essay before turning it in. And then also remember to thank those, right, who help: donors, references, recommenders, essay reviewers, okay? If you get the scholarship, you might want to, tell the people who helped you or recommended you for the scholarship, hey, I got this scholarship. Thank you so much for helping me, put it together, or for recommending me for it, right? Often, I know Denise can attest to this, like you'll write a letter of recommendation for a student, you won't even know they got the scholarship. And so it just helps, right? Because it's a time consuming process to write a letter of recommendation. So I think it's just common courtesy to really, to thank people who are involved in it. All right. Proactive procrastination. Denise, what does that mean?
So this means that let's say that you have an assignment due for a class and you're kind of procrastinating on it. You can use that procrastination time to be proactive and look for scholarships. So let's say you're like, I don't want to do my sociology homework or my biology homework. Let me just take some time to browse the Bronco scholarship portal to see what's available to me. So I might type in keywords like first gen. I might type in keywords like your majors. So if you're a STEM major, if you're like pursuing a teaching credential in the future, you're liberal arts, if you are community service oriented. So you start using that time to look for scholarships. Or if you're saying, I don't really want to work on this essay, let me just brainstorm what different groups I belong to, what my demographic, what populations I'm part of. So I can have a draft, or I can have a mind map, or I can have a free write ready for when I do my my essay later. So it's using that procrastination time instead of like playing on games on your phone or watching another Netflix episode, using it to be kind of proactive in browsing scholarships and preparing your scholarship application. This is actually something that a presenter mentioned for poly transfer. I think the student got something around the range of $30,000 in scholarship one year, which is amazing. She was like, what do I do with all this money? But she was very thankful for it. And she said one of the things was proactive procrastination, where if she didn't want to work on an assignment, she would look at what's available to her and just start working on that. And even if it's something like bookmarking it, so starting an application, and then if she doesn't have an essay, writing like a really awesome essay is going to go in here eventually. That way, at least she's gotten it started, and she knows she can go back and complete that application. Because a lot, like Dustin mentioned, a lot of the time it can be overwhelming, or the hardest part is getting something started. And then once you do it, you're like, oh, that wasn't too bad to begin with, or that wasn't too bad after all.
Yeah, and I've had a particular student that is in RAP, also in EOP, to remain nameless, but I'm like, I asked him one day, like, how do you get all these scholarships? And he told me he treats it as a job. Like, he's like, I don't work, but I treat my scholarship writing as if it's like my part-time job. And by looking at it like that, by framing it like that, it wasn't something that was peripheral or something that he would do last minute, but it was really integral to his schedule, built into his schedule, and something that he did every week. So he set aside, like he was doing a job, a couple hours a week to just work on scholarship writing. And I thought that was a really effective way of framing it so that, you know, he didn't put it off and it was really part of his whole academic experience.
That time adds up too. If you like spend 10 minutes here, half an hour there, 15 minutes there, it can really work towards a final product. Like I know I get notifications from my phone that says you've been online. This is your amount of weekly usage of internet. And I don't even know where all that time comes from. So if you are starting to be mindful in setting aside a time to write your scholarship essays or to work towards it, it can really add up. And another thing I wanted to mention also is regarding time management is to do that when you're using your resources. So if you're reaching out to a peer or an advisor or a mentor to review your essay, give them some time to do so. So it helps if you give them like a week, for example, or at least a couple of days to review it instead of this is due at 5. Can you look at it? And it's 1 o'clock now. Because then they can give you more quality feedback too. It's less time constrained. So they have time to really look at it, to see what the prompt is, to look at your resume. So sending your resume or even just like a list of what you've been involved in. So they see that you're really showing the committee who you are and how you've developed these skills and help you frame that or show that into your essay. Also, if you're asking for references, giving them time or like letters of recommendation, giving them time to write that because that gives them a chance to make it also more personalized, more specific to you and your experience and how you can contribute to their organization or to represent the organization, for example.
Yeah, and you're going to get a better product. If you ask for a letter of recommendation 2 days before the due date, you're not going to get a very good product from that professor, that advisor, right? If you give them time, you give them a brag sheet and stuff to write about, you're going to get a much better product in the end.
So we have some worksheets that we can use to practice. We're going to share them right now, but we're also going to send them to you afterwards. So we'll send you the PowerPoint or the slide deck and these worksheets so you can fill them out and use that when you're creating your essays.
Right, so you have your scholarship essay worksheet here. So scholarship name at the top. You can list key points from the essay prompt that the application is requesting in your essay. You can list your academic goals, your career goals. But I think the key point is, why did you choose these goals, right? So don't just say, you know, I have a goal to be a civil engineer, but what actually prompted you to make that decision? You know, how does the career relate to your personal values and how you want to change the world? Okay, so if you talk about your accomplishments, don't just list them. I'm secretary of this, the most valuable this, and right. You want to state what you learned from your activities. Okay, did you learn organization? Did you learn how to market your particular organization? Did you learn how to collaborate collectively with folks within your organization? Okay, so don't just, right, you know, so it's not like a resume where you're just kind of listing things, but you want to say what does this tell, what do your accomplishments tell about you? How does it make you unique? Okay. And in terms of your work experience, same thing. What did you learn from your work experience? If you're a tutor, if you're a peer mentor, what did that teach you about yourself, about how you work with folks, and why did you choose that type of job, right? And then what makes you unique, right? So, and that's very important because there's going to be a lot of essays that the scholarship readers are going to be reading. So why are you special? Why are you unique? Okay, what sets you apart? Okay, So once again, it's like Denise was saying, don't just talk about the obstacles you faced, but how did you recover from those obstacles? What did you learn from those obstacles that made you a better person or a more efficient student? Right? And then, is there anything else the scholarship committee should know about you? All right. So this is a really good, Denise and I like to show this because it's a really good starter, right? If you're having difficulty starting your scholarship essay, you can start working on these handouts and it'll really get those ideas flowing. Denise, did you want to talk about the second page?
Yeah, and I wanted to add here too that it can help you look at soft skills that can apply to the scholarship that you're interested in. So, for example, I helped a student who was applying to a population or to a particular thing that focused on veterans. And although she didn't have any direct experience with veterans, she was able to see that she's worked with first generation students or with people that have low income background. So you can use those skills like empathy, like patience, like teaching these different skills to populations that you may have to repeat it in different ways. So you can start looking at, okay, well, although this scholarship may not be directly involved with what I'm pursuing, it's in the peripheral, and the skills that I've developed can contribute. Like I can still apply to this, and even though it may not be directly related to what I'm particularly doing right now. So don't like exclude yourself, or don't take yourself out of the running. Don't reject yourself before you even applied. Apply to scholarships, write essays, and let them decide, because sometimes they don't even have enough applicants. So really looking at what you've achieved, what you've accomplished, and showing that can help make you a competitive candidate. We have some other scholarship workshops or scholarship worksheets too, like essays, like who you are, your values, what the scholarship will enable you to do, why you're a deserving candidate, your commitment to your goals. And then we have some action words that can help you when you're writing your essay. This can even help when you're writing your resume. So instead of repeating words like I did this, I led that, you can write like strengthened, engineered, you built, you gained. So you're using these action verbs to show what skills you've developed, what you've done in your experience, like with clubs or jobs or volunteering. And that can help make your essay more interesting and keep your reader engaged. And then here's a sample outline. So your first paragraph, you have your introductory paragraph with the hook. You have your supporting paragraphs with your details, and then you have your conclusion where you bring it home, you restate why you're the best candidate, you rephrase your thesis, and you can go let the scholarship committee know that and leave an impression of why you are the best candidate. And remember to send a thank you note after you're selected. So similar to like a 5-paragraph essay that you might have learned in English class, but apply to who you are and showing that to the scholarship committee that's reading your essay.
Yeah, and I often recommend that last part to just any student for writing. I think it's a really good, succinct kind of way to structure, an essay. All right. Do we have any questions in our last few minutes here? We got about 3 minutes left. You can put it in the chat or raise your hand. And Christian has put a survey in the chat box. We'd love for you to fill that out. Your input really helps us, modify our presentation so they're better suited for you all.
And Raven, we'll send you the link to the worksheets and their PDFs so you can save them, you can edit them like on your own. You can print them out and work on them that way too. So we'll send you that link with the link to the presentation too. And there's also some slides in the presentation that have examples of essays and then revised essays to how they can be better and improved. So you'll be able to review that. you have any other questions or tips of what you've done that have helped you secure scholarships? Yes, we'll send it out to everyone after the workshop. It might take a little bit of time, but it's definitely worth it to not have loans, student loans after graduation, if you can get this money that can help supplement.
Mhm. Yeah, the money's out there. You just have to set aside time to, to go get it. That's really the biggest problem is, how are you going to set aside that time to actually write this stuff? So if you want to create a schedule, a weekly schedule to write these essays, it'll be much more manageable.
Well, thank you for joining us. If you do not have any other